Okay, it is officially 8 o'clock, so let's go ahead and get started. For those of you who haven't met me, I'm Fred Forgy, the director of the Real Estate Masters Program. And this course is the Real Estate Investments course, which typically is kind of a companion course, if you will, to the Real Estate Finance course that we offer in our program. Both courses are taught independent of each other, so you won't necessarily need to have the information from the other class for this class or from this class for that class. They are sort of taught as kind of two bifurcated sort of courses. So what we do is, in this first class session, is we do kind of a quick review, overview of basic real estate finance. So those two handouts that I sent you earlier this week that I asked you to work through and kind of read through, kind of get yourself familiarized with, that's what we're going to be spending our time with today. Then the real material for the actual investments course really starts next week, okay? Which is where we jump into the textbook. Now, if you haven't purchased the textbook, I mean, this is the book, Real Estate Finance and Investments. My advice would be not necessarily to buy the most recent edition. The most recent edition is how much? 150? Really? I thought it was more than that.
Well, I think you can buy it.
Okay. Well, let's put it this way. It's expensive. Yeah. So you can get one of the previous editions, either like anywhere all the way back to probably like the 12th edition. If you haven't already, much less expensive. They really have, there's not a lot in real estate finance that has changed. I mean, pretty much the basic calculations are the basic calculations. I mean, there's a couple of little minor changes, but it's not going to affect this course. So you, go ahead.
Sorry, the book is, the previous editions are free online.
Okay, well, there you go.
Yes, you just Google it.
Okay. All right. And you are, sir? Okay. All right. So, hopefully you've got the book. We're only using a handful of chapters out of the book for this class. We use the bulk of the chapters for the real estate finance course, but obviously we use it for both courses. So, those of you that are only maybe taking this class and maybe not taking the other class, then you might be able to sell it to one of your peers that are going to be taking maybe the real estate finance course if you choose to not take that course. Okay, the format of this course is pretty straightforward. And that is, it's a lot of sort of question and answer, sort of lecture and discussion, but the bulk of what we do in this class are calculations, okay? So this is one of those courses that almost is exclusively about the numbers, all right? Now, does that mean it's a math course? No. Do you actually have to have mathematical skills to do this course? Not really, other than adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. What you do have to have, however, is an understanding of the logic that goes behind a lot of the questions that we're going to be basically going over in the problem sets that we're going to be doing. And you'll begin to sort of see that as we sort of get a little further on into the semester in terms of the kinds of problems that we're going to be working through. Now, the majority of our time is going to be spent on the calculator. Now, did everybody get a calculator? Anybody not have one? I brought a few extras just in case, because you're going to need it, all right? You will also need, maybe not today, but in one of the one or more of the future sessions, you will need to have your laptop with Microsoft Excel loaded on it, because we will be building some spreadsheets, okay? So, you've got your calculator, you've got the book, you've got Excel, you should be pretty much good to go. Now, the format of the course, as we sort of start this out, is, as I said, we're going to be working through a number of problems. Well, what we'll do after we work through those problems, and so for example today, what I've done is we're going to pretty much spend the first hour and 45 minutes or something like that on handout number 1, then we're going to migrate to handout number 2, and then after we're done with handout number 2, then you're going to have a quiz. Quiz number 1 is going to be 15 questions, about 45 minutes, the last 45 minutes of class, and it will be an open book, open notes, open everything, except for your neighbor, okay? Now, the incentive here is for you to take good notes, okay? And to pay attention to what's going on, and then you'll perform hopefully well on the quiz. Okay, if you don't perform well on the quiz. What happens is if you look at the syllabus addendum that's there in front of you, is basically a couple of weeks from now, on week 3, you'll have test number 1, which will cover handouts 1, handout number 2, and chapter 11. Okay? If you don't have to take test number 1. If you do well on those first 3 quizzes, you can say, I don't want to take test number 1. Okay? But if you bomb any one of those first 3 quizzes, you've got basically a second chance. Now, the difference with the second chance is there's always a catch. And the catch is the tests are closed book, closed notes, and all you have is your calculator in your brain. Okay? So the incentive is obviously to do well on the quizzes and not have to inherently take the test. But that's your second chance. Your third chance is if you bomb the first 3 quizzes, you bomb the tests. We have a comprehensive final for this course, which covers everything. That test, or that comprehensive final, will replace your lowest test grade. Does that make sense to everybody? So you've literally got 3 chances to get it right. My objective here is not in any way, shape, or fashion to make this more difficult or make it more complicated than what it needs to be. My objective is for you to learn the material and to master the material. Okay? The reason I give you 3 chances is because some of you don't quite get it maybe on the first time around. Okay? For whatever reason. Okay? Maybe it's brand new to you. Maybe, you got screwed up on something. But because the way that these are graded is you're going to find out it's either right or wrong. There's no multiple choice, okay? You either do the calculation and you do it right, or you get it wrong, okay? So as a result, what you're probably going to see as we do this first quiz at the end of class today is the grades will range all the way from 100%. You'll have some of the folks in here that will get a perfect score, and you'll probably see some folks that probably will get maybe even a 0, okay? That may not get any of them correct, okay? So what that says is there are some folks that have done what it takes to obviously perform well, and then those that haven't. So my point is, take the time to try to pay attention to what we're doing, take good notes, and you'll be fine, okay? But if you are, potentially just sort of not really paying attention, not really engaged in what's going on, you're probably going to have a problem, okay? Everybody understand that? Okay? Now, in terms of the content of the course, just to kind of go over that a little bit. This course is what we call sort of a course focused on the equity side. The real estate finance course is focused on the debt side of the business. So what do we mean by that? Well, the debt side of the business is all about loans, okay? All about borrowing money. The equity side is about where do you get investment funds from? Who do you get them from? But not just who, but what kind of a return are they seeking? What sort of requirements are they placing upon you? How do they get paid? When do they get paid? Who gets paid first? Who gets paid last? What is the tax structure of the deal? What is the ownership structure of the deal? Those are the kinds of things that this course focuses on. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? All right. Now, with that, what we're going to do, as I said, today will be pretty much just start from the scratch review of basic time value of money. Now, for some of you, this may be brand new. Others of you, this may be stuff that you've had in previous classes and you're just going to be like totally on top of it and will ace the quiz, okay? So my suspicion is it's going to be a broad cross-section, all right? So that's not a problem. That's okay. You're in this, obviously, on your own to try to do as well as you can personally, okay? All right. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. All right. So see, Alex just came in. Just missing a couple of things. All right. So the first thing we ought to do is help you get familiarized with the calculator, okay? So with the HP10B, there are a couple of little nuances. Now, how many of you, just out of curiosity, before this course have ever used this calculator before? Okay, so about half of you, all right? Now, for those of you that are brand new to this, it's not a complicated calculator to use. It's actually a very simple calculator to use, but it's got just a few little nuances that we need to kind of bring you up to speed on, all right? One of those things is in terms of clearing out the calculator, okay? All right, whenever I write up here on the screen kind of this little squiggly box, what that means is that's the shift key, okay? On your calculator, you have a gold or orange sort of shift key over here kind of on the bottom sort of left-hand side, all right? That key basically is just like a shift on a computer or a keyboard. It is accessing a function, if you will, that is below the other, or below what's stated on the key itself. So in this particular case, when we hit the shift and then the key right below it, which says C, what we're actually accessing is what's below the C, which is clear all right? Now, what this key does, and this is really important, and this is, like I said, this is one of those little nuances to make sure that you understand this, because this is the sort of thing that will screw you up in terms of doing these calculations, okay? Whenever you hit the shift and the clear all, hold down the clear all key. Okay, hit the shift and then hold down the clear all key. Now, in your display should be probably 1 P year or 12 P year. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. If it is 1 P year, that means, in essence, the calculator is set for annual compounding, okay, or once a year. If it happens to have 12 in the display, that means it's set up for monthly. Virtually all of our calculations for this course, as far as I know, are either going to be monthly or annual. Okay, monthly, obviously for monthly payments. Annual if we're looking at the whole year. Okay, now in terms of the problem sets that you're going to be given, the very first thing you should do with every single problem, step one, read the question and determine whether or not it is annual or whether it is monthly, because that is the first piece that will dictate whether you're going to approach the problem correctly or not, all right? So if you read the problem and it's giving you all annual information, then you are going to ensure the calculator is set to 1 payment per year. Now, the question is, how do I go about setting or resetting to one or the other, all right? So what you do, if you want to set it to annual, you're going to hit 1, you're going to hit the shift key, and then underneath the payment key is payments per year. Okay, everybody see that? On the calculator. All right, so now if you hit or type in 1 shift and hit the payments per year, and now you go back and you hit the shift clear all, it should now show 1 P year in the display. All right? For monthly, same process. 1 shift, payments per year, okay? And that will shift it to monthly compounding. And once again, to make sure that it's set up correctly, all you gotta do is go back and hit the shift clear all, okay? Everybody good? Now, one thing to sort of note here is with this calculator, this is one of those nuances I was talking about, where you turn this calculator off, just by hitting the shift and then the on key or shift off, what's going to happen is whatever the last problem that you were working on, it stays there. This calculator has one of those sort of semi-permanent memories that you literally could have been working on a problem months ago that you didn't clear out of the memory registers. You turn on the calculator today, that problem is still in there. Okay, does everybody follow that? So in order to make sure that you clear everything out, all the memory registers out, that is why you always do the shift clear all. So backtracking just a little bit. If you had only hit the clear key, what does the clear key do? The clear key only clears what is in the display right then, right there. Doesn't clear out the memory registers, only clears out what is in the display. Does that make sense? Okay, I know I'm going really slow. It's going to pick up the pace here pretty quickly, but right now I just want to get the basics down. All right. So, everybody comfortable with that? Now, from here, a couple of other little things. Your calculator, whenever you purchase it, typically, whenever you turn it on, you're probably going to get 0.00 in the display, all right? In other words, 2 decimal places, okay? Several of the problems that we will be dealing with, you don't really want to round off inherently to just 2 decimal places. You want the calculator to go out completely. If the calculator is set like this, we can reset it to something else. And so what I tend to do is as follows. You hit the shift key, and then underneath the equal key is DISP for display. And then hit 9. What that will do is that will kick out the decimals to 9 decimal places as far as it will go. Okay, does that make sense? So now when you work through problems, it's just not going to round anything off, which is probably a good thing. Okay? All right? Other little things that I probably should mention right now, that should be good. Okay, now let's move on to actually trying to do a simple little problem. We're going to just to make sure that you're able to put things into the calculator correctly. All right, so let's assume that we've got a basic mortgage problem. And that mortgage problem is going to be as follows. We've got a $100,000 mortgage. We have a 10% interest rate and a 30-year term. And we want to find out what the payment is for this particular mortgage. Now, I don't expect you, I mean, obviously you should have looked through the materials and you may know how to already do this, but I'm going to walk you through the steps to sort of get there. Okay, first of all, the first question you should ask is what? Monthly or annual, okay? In this particular case, I'm going to probably ask you in the question, what is the monthly mortgage payment, okay? So, what you're going to do, your first step on the calculator is going to be typing in the 12 shift payments per year to make sure that it's set up for the 12 payments per year. Then you're going to type in the 100,000. That is going to be your loan amount, or specifically your present value, which is one of the keys along the top row of the calculator. Okay? That is your loan amount, $100,000. Then you're going to type in the 10% as your interest rate. Also a key on the top row of the calculator. 10, interest rate. Then the next step, which we'll explain, is you're going to hit 30, shift, and this is the key to hit that shift, and I'll explain why, in. Okay? Now, what you should see pop up in your display when you do that is 360, which is simply saying we have 12 monthly payments times 30 years. 12 times 30, 360. Okay? So your calculator is just letting you know, yeah, it's got it, 360 months. So what you should be able to do now is simply hit the payment key. And if you've done everything correctly and there's no other insanity on your calculator, you should get something like 877.57 and some change. Okay, is everybody getting that? If you're not getting that, we need to take a quick little break to make sure that we see what you're doing wrong, okay? Yep. 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 And then you should just simply hit the payment key. Top row. There you go. You got it. No, shift. Yep. Yep. Present value. No, that's in. Okay. Yep. Present value. Yep. Right. No, just like it's written. Yep. Interest rate. Top row, second key. Shift. Yeah, top row, far left. Okay, as you hit payment. There you go, you got it. Okay, anybody else? Okay, let's take a look through. One more time, I'll watch it. Yep. Payment. Thanks for you. Yep. 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 Interest rate. Yep. Shift. Yep. Just payment. Just payment. There you go. You got it. Okay. All right. So everybody's gotten through the first step. All right. So all this is doing is that was just an exercise just to make sure that your calculators are all set up and ready to go. All right. So your monthly payment would have been $877.57 for that $100,000 mortgage at 10% for 30 years. Now, just to play around with things here just for a moment, do not clear everything out. All right, let's say we were able to lower our interest rate to 5%. So your next step, all you should have to do is type in 5 and hit the interest rate key, and then re-hit the payment key. Okay? What do you get? 536.82. Okay? So what we have done, just very simply, and there's a method to my madness here, is we've just simply said, all right, we've taken this set of inputs, we have changed one of the variables, in this case, the interest rate. We've lowered the interest rate from 10% to 5%, and then as a result of that, we have then recalculated for the payment, okay? So all this is saying is, as a result of lowering that interest rate from 10% to 5%, this is our new monthly payment. Everybody cool with that? Okay. Now, the cool thing with the calculator with respect to this is we can keep changing the variables, okay, and replacing the variables. So like, for example, if we just sort of continue on here for just a second, we say, okay, we've lowered now the interest rate from 10% to 5%. Let's say that we want to raise the actual amount we borrowed. Okay, we want to raise that amount to $150,000. So what we can do, just follow through, 150,000, put that in as our new present value, and then, once again, resolve for the payment. And you should get, what, 805? 23, okay? So all that's doing is just, so now here's the thing that logic-wise you need to start, kind of thinking about. What are the current terms of this loan? Our loan amount is 150,000. Our interest rate is now 5%. Our duration, or the overall length of the loan, is still 30 years. And then now that is our monthly payment. Okay, everybody cool with that? Okay, any questions? Okay, all right, let us move forward. Okay, now, if you've taken the time, as I asked you to do, to look through, kind of work through this first module or first handout, which is the investment analysis tools, what this does and did is to basically walk you through step by step of how to set up a whole variety of basic time value of money problems using the financial calculator that we are using, okay? And so what the goal of this particular module is to get you familiarized with the basic ways that we need to kind of begin to sort of think about these sorts of calculations. Like, number one, why are we doing the calculation? What does it mean? How is it used? Those sorts of things that we're going to kind of work our way through. But part of it is, once again, you being able to pull from whatever the question is, what are the relevant key pieces of information? Because what you're going to find in this first piece, that's really all you're doing, is you're trying to figure out what are the variables that you need to then translate and put into the calculator. It's not about whether you're good at math or not. You can get away with not really actually being good at math at all and do very well with this if you're logical, okay? Because it's all about the logic, all right? Now, let's just sort of start off and do a few other little kind of calculator kind of things. If you look across the top row of your calculator, whoops, you've got the following keys. So I'm just going to write them up here for a second. You've already sort of used them a little bit, but I think it might be a good idea to sort of talk about each one of them. Okay. Let's start with these. All right. Those are the most important sort of functions as it relates to time value of money. We've got a couple of others we'll throw in there, but this gets you to the basics. Okay, the first one. This is about the number of periods. Okay, and the reason we use number of periods is because periods can mean different things. It could mean a period could be a year, a period could be a month, a period could be a day, okay? That's for you to, in essence, decide and set up, okay? So, for example, if I say a loan has a 30-year term, well, technically, that is 30 years, which could be 30 periods, but it can also be, if it's monthly payments, 360 periods, okay? Does that make sense to people? Okay, now, the next one is what is the interest rate per year? Okay, that's what this stands for, interest rate per year. All right, so whatever interest rate we put in there, that is going to be, in essence, kind of our annual interest rate, or annualized interest rate. Okay? The next one, oh, and also it could be, in some cases, looked at as a rate of return as well. one of the things that you will find with some of the questions and some of the lingo and jargon that we use within real estate and finance is that we sometimes call the interest rate a lot of different things. And so interest rate is one of them, rate of return is another. We might also refer to it as a lender's yield. We might also talk about it being an internal rate of return. So there's a whole number of ways that this may be expressed, but right now all you need to be really focused on is the interest rate. Okay? The PV stands for the present value. Now what this means, in very simplistic terms, is what is the value today? Okay? What is the value of something in today's dollars? Now, in some cases, that may not always be the case, but when we get to those unusual circumstances, we will explain them. But the way to sort of think of it is what is happening today, okay, in today's world, in today's value. Okay, we're going to skip over the payment for a second and come back to it. Future value is pretty much just the opposite of present value, in the sense that this is a forward-looking value in terms of what the value of an asset is potentially going to be at some future date in time. And so it may be, what is the value of a piece of real estate potentially 5 years from now? What do we project it to be? So in a lot of cases, it's not going to be, in one sense, an absolute value. It could be, once again, a predicted value or an estimated value, but it's a forward-looking sort of value based upon whatever set of assumptions have been put into place. Okay? And then finally, we have the payment. Okay? Now, this is going to be typically what is also referred to as a periodic payment. All right? Again, notice the verbiage, periodic, periods. Okay? Typically, what this is referring to is something that occurs regularly. Okay? And in this particular case, if we say, like we did with the mortgage problem earlier, you have 360 monthly mortgage payments. So in that case, that monthly mortgage payment is a periodic payment, meaning it occurs every month for 360 months. Okay? Now, also, in real estate terms, this, in addition to applying to mortgage payments, it might also apply to lease payments. Okay, that you may say, all right, I'm leasing out a shopping center, I am leasing it out for the next 60 months or 5 years, here is the monthly lease payment. Well, then that would also be an example of how that payment might be utilized. Okay?
Is that like an annuity or?
It also can be referred to, in some cases, as an annuity, which simply means a fixed payment either being made or received for a fixed period of time. Now, and that actually brings up an interesting point. You notice what I just said. This could be plus or, equal, plus or minus. And what I mean by that is, think about it like this. If I am making a mortgage payment to a bank, is that a plus or a minus to me?
Minus.
Minus. But to the bank, it is what?
Plus.
A plus. Okay? So one of the things that you always need to sort of be thinking about as we work through some of these problems is, whose perspective are we looking at this from? Are we looking at this from the lender's perspective, or are we looking at this from the borrower's perspective? Because that will make a huge difference in terms of the calculations, because you need to keep an accurate accounting of who is paying, who is receiving. Okay? So for example, if we kind of go back to that problem that we worked earlier, where we said, okay, 12 payments per year, 100,000 was our loan amount, 10% was our interest rate, 30 shift in was our term, and we had calculated our payment, and it was negative 877.57. You tell me, whose perspective is that from? The borrower or the lender?
Borrower.
Borrower. Why? Because they're the ones making the payment. It's negative. Now, this would be the same exact problem, but if we were to do this from the lender's perspective, so this is borrower. So from the lender's perspective, the setup would be virtually identical except for one piece. We would make the present value or the loan amount a negative number. How do we achieve that? On your calculator, over on the far left side, fourth key down, you see a little key that has +/- That is the change sign key, which basically takes whatever's in the display and changes the sign from either positive to negative or negative to positive. All right, so in this case, we are using that function to change the loan amount from being a positive 100,000 to being a negative 100,000. Interest rate stays the same, term stays the same, but what you're going to find whenever you solve now for the payment, it's no longer going to be negative. It's going to be positive. Because from the lender's perspective, what has happened? From the lender's perspective, they have issued a check, if you will, for $100,000, okay? And then they are now receiving $877.57 for the next 30 years or 360 months. Does that make sense to everybody? You might be better if you sat over here or back there.
Oh, it should be fine.
Okay. All right. Everybody clear with that? All right. Now, move forward. Okay. A couple of other functions that we're going to get into a little bit later, but I'm going to go ahead and kind of bring them up now, is on your calculator, underneath the CST key, you're going to see, second row, third key over, you're going to see IRR per year. Okay? That's the internal rate of return function, which we'll be using a little bit later. Okay? I'm just sort of mentioning it now. And to access that function, you're going to obviously have to hit the shift key before you actually use it. And we'll, like I said, we're not going to go through the example of that one just yet. The other one, which is right next to it, is underneath the PRC key, is NPV, net present value. Okay? Once again, it's another one we'll be using a little bit later as another financial function. But I just want to kind of go ahead and highlight those while we're sort of talking about these. And then another one, underneath the future value key, is the word amort. Okay? This means amortize. All right? One of the things the calculator will do, once again we'll be working through some examples of this, is the calculator will set up an entire loan amortization schedule. What does that mean? Basically, it will set up all of your payments, all of your principal payments, all of your interest payments, and your ending balance. And it will keep all of that in memory so that you can access and say, how much interest did I pay during year number 1? The calculator will allow you to retrieve that. Okay? How much in principal payments did I make during year 5? You can retrieve that as well. Or how much total interest did I pay during the entire loan? So that will be a neat little function that we'll be getting into a little bit later. Okay? Just sort of putting that out there as to something that we'll be talking about hopefully probably a little bit later today, if not next time. Okay. Other things that are worth mentioning on the calculator Right now, there is one other one that you need to be very wary of. Okay? Underneath the margin key, MAR, you will see BEG/END. Begin end mode. This key is evil because this is the one that when people are working through problems and they maybe work one problem that requires the use of this and then they forget to set it back to the normal setting, will screw them up on every future computation, okay? And the guys that are laughing, it's probably happened to them, okay? Now, what this key does, let me explain. This is where we start getting into what we're going to talk about in terms of timelines, all right? The easiest way to begin to visualize a problem is to set up a timeline. Now, your handout, they use basically the same sort of thing. They use what's kind of like a T-bar sort of thing. Same concept, just done a little bit differently. All right? In this particular case, if we kind of go back to our original loan info, the $100,000 loan amount, 10% as the interest rate, 30 years as the term, once again, 12 payments per year, and we solve for the payment, and we get the $877.57 again. Okay, so how would we visualize that in this sort of kind of continuum of time? All right? So first of all, this is the way that I would tend to approach it. Now, first of all, you're not going to be required to actually write down these sort of visualizations. I'm not concerned about that. I'm concerned about you getting the right answer, okay? So, focus on the process, but ultimately at the end of the day, you got to get the right answer, all right? Now, what is happening here at time period 0, which is present value, is that you, and this is from the borrower's perspective, you, as the borrower, are receiving $100,000 positive. Okay? So right now, the moment you get that loan, you are receiving from the lender $100,000. Yes? Okay? Now, obviously, what's happening is then you're using that money to give to whoever you're buying the property from, but the point being is you are receiving the money from the borrower, or sorry, money from the lender for $100,000 at time period 0. You are going to pay this back over 30 years or 360 months. So from here to here is 30 years or 360 months. Each month, if we were to put a little hash all the way across, we would literally have 360 monthly payments that we would be making, and the monthly payment that we would be making would be a negative $877.57. So all the way across, every single payment is $877.57. Everybody follow with that? And then our interest rate is 10%. Okay? So now we have visualized what is actually taking place. So what is going to happen here at the end of 360 months? We make our last payment, and then the balance of the loan is now 0. Okay? But that's, in essence, how we would visualize that from the borrower's perspective. Now, one of the things that you should pick up on here is what happens above the line and what happens below the line. Above the line are all positives, positive cash flows. Below the line are all negative cash flows. Now, you're going to say, well, that seems pretty obvious. Well, it is obvious until we start getting into more complex problems. Because what you may have happen is that for a property, what happens if one year the property makes money. But the next year, it loses money. And the following year, it makes money again. Well, whether that's above or below the line is going to matter, because that's going to dictate how you're going to go about solving for it. Okay, does that make sense? On these very basic fundamental problems, you don't really have to get as hung up on it, but it's kind of like, if you're going to learn something, learn it the right way, apply it the right way, and then as you get more complex, it's going to be a heck of a lot easier. Okay, it's all going to fit together very nicely. All right, everybody cool with that? Now, if this were from the lender's perspective, what would we do? Just flip it. Everybody follow that? In other words, the lender's perspective would be the 877.57 positive up here above the line, and then $100,000 negative below the line, from the lender's perspective. Okay, everybody cool with that? Yes, no, possibly could be. Okay, questions?
Most of the time, we should have it on N, right?
Okay, I'm about to get to that.
Okay.
So, I digressed a little bit because I wanted to show you the timeline, because I want to talk about this begin end mode thing. All right, the assumption that we normally are under whenever we're looking at virtually any of these sort of time value of money problems is that the payment, and then some of you are going to say, this is not how it happens in reality. Well, it is if you listen to the whole explanation. The assumption that we make as a general rule for all payments that are made or received is they typically occur at the end of the period, meaning end of the month, end of the year. Okay? Now, what you're saying in the back of your head, wait. I pay my mortgage at the beginning of the month. I pay my rent, or my lease payment at the beginning of the month, not at the end of the month. Okay, that is true. But here we're talking about how is the income recognized by the person that it is being paid to. And that's the convention you've got to get your head into. And what I mean by that is as follows. You make your mortgage payment, let's say, or rent payment at the beginning of the month. Okay? What happens? Okay? During that month, it is sent to your lender. The lender does whatever processing that they need to do, or in the case of a landlord, they do whatever processing that they need to do, and then at the end of the month, they basically settle their books and say, here are all the payments that have been made to us. We are now recording them as a matter of income at the end of the month. Does that make sense? Yes or no? Or end of the year. Okay? So the calculator allows you, however, to recognize some things, if you choose to, at the beginning of the period, the begin function. And what that typically refers to is what is commonly called an annuity due. Or due at the beginning. Whereas at the end of the period, it's just an ordinary or regular annuity. And let me put it even more bluntly. 90 times out of 100, you're going to be doing an ordinary annuity into the period, end of the month. On a rare occasion, you might be asked to do an annuity due. Now your question should be, okay, what's the difference? What's really happening here? What is the calculator doing with that one singular piece of information? Okay, come back to our timeline here for a second. What is happening here at time period 0? We've said, you, as the borrower, are receiving $100,000, yes? But when do you make your first payment? 1 month later, literally, okay? Right here, at the end of the first month. You don't make your payment like the moment you receive the money, or at least that's not the way that we're setting this up. In other words, the idea is 1 month is passing, and then your payment is made. Okay? So that is how it is ordinarily set up. 90% of the time, that is the way you should begin to think about it. So your first payment is on month 1, your last payment is on month 360. Okay?
So basically, if you don't say anything, then we assume it's at the end. Or
Correct.
if you mention that it's
Correct.
a due annuity at the beginning. for
Right,
change.
an annuity due. Now, if I were to say, calculate this as if it were an annuity due, then you change everything over to the begin mode. Now, do this for me, but on your calculator, hit the shift key and hit the begin end key. You should, in your display, see a little BEG in the middle of the display. That is the part that is evil, okay? Because if that is there, the calculator is now set up for any and all calculations that follow. Automatically, it is in begin mode. Okay, I'm about to explain what it does. Okay, now, just to be safe, switch it back. All you have to do to switch it back is hit the shift and then the begin end mode key again. That word disappears, you're all good to go again. What does that key do? What it does is it says to the calculator, move everything forward by 1 period. So what it's going to do is that $877.57 that you would have paid here at month 1, it moves it back to instantaneously occur with the first. Well, if that's shifting back that first one, it's shifting back all of them, okay? Meaning that your last payment no longer occurs on month 360, it actually occurs on 359, okay? Now, you're saying, okay, big deal. Well, it is a big deal, because what that means is you, as the borrower, are literally giving everything to the lender a full month early, all the way through the loan. Okay, that is significant, especially whenever you look at how that impacts all the way through. It may not seem like much at the moment, trust me, it is. Okay? Now, does everybody understand that? Yes or no? Okay? All right, let's move forward. Okay. All right, so let's now begin to kind of work through some of the exact problem types that you've got in this little handout that I provided you. And specifically, probably the best place to start okay, on page 3.12, I'm going to write these up here so it's okay. 3.12, and what they refer to as the 6 functions of a dollar. Okay? And I'm just going to write them up here as they have them, and then we'll kind of work through. They say compound a single amount to a future value. Okay, so let's start with that one. Compound a single amount to a future value. All right, an example of this. We'll use a real estate example. You buy a property today. Yep.
What page are you on in the document?
I'm sorry?
16.
15?
Well, I thought it was, well, it says 3.12 down at the bottom of the, it may be page 16 in the document, but it's 3.12 is the actual page. Okay? So, once again, this is a situation where you buy a property, let's say today, and you want to know how much that particular property may be worth at some future date. Does that make sense? Based upon a set of assumptions. Okay, one assumption is, well, how long of a period of time are we talking about? Is one assumption. And the second assumption would be, at what interest rate or what growth rate are we talking about? Okay, so for example, if we bought, this is where the timeline begins to be, starting to come in handy, right? And right now we're not talking about loans, we are simply talking about, let's say, cash money out of pocket, okay? So I buy a property today, how much do we want to pay for it? $100,000, okay? So from my perspective, as the purchaser of this property, I'm paying $100,000 out of my own pocket. I'm not borrowing the money, this is all my money, okay? How long do I want to hold the property? How many years or months?
5 years.
5 years. Okay? And do we want to do this monthly or do we want to do this annually? You tell me, we're going to do both. Okay, we're going to do it monthly. All right, so that means 60 months. Okay? Now what we're going to be searching for is how much is this property worth at the end of 5 years. So what other piece of information do we need to know? The interest rate or the growth rate. Notice I used another term to call it, instead of calling it just the interest rate, now I'm calling it a growth rate. In other words, how much is that property potentially going to grow in value? All right, now so this is the sort of thing, those of you that have worked in the real estate professions, you typically talk about what? Price appreciation. You talk about your home value is going to go up by so many % a year, that sort of thing. Yes? Yeah. Okay, so give me a normal price appreciation % per year. Okay, 5, you want to use 5%, okay? So 5% per year, price appreciation. All right, so now, how do we go about solving this problem? We've got all the variables, now what are we, in essence, going to be solving for?
What about the payment? There's no payment?
In this case, there's no payment, this is a single fixed.
Yeah, you have a loan.
Right.
Okay.
So what are we solving for here? Future value. And it's going to be a positive number because that's the amount that we're going to be able to sell it for, hopefully, at the end of that 5 years. Okay, so that's the setup in terms of the timeline. Now, putting it into the calculator, that's where, once again, you've got to translate the logic and be able to do that. So, let's see if you can figure it out. I'm going to go ahead and write it up here. Okay, that's the setup for the calculator. Okay. So let me do it real quick. Okay, did you match? Okay, $128,335.87. So all we're saying is, if you bought this property, you held it for 5 years, the value goes up 5% a year, monthly compounded, because it's what we chose to do, this would be the value at the end of 5 years. Does that make sense, everybody? Yes or no? Okay. Now, those of you that didn't get it, what did you get? Were you close or were you way off?
Question.
Yep.
Why is it a negative?
Okay. It's a negative because in this case, it is a singular cash payment that we made as the purchaser. It's no longer a loan. It's simply, I'm writing a check to you, you currently own the property, you're selling it to me, I'm writing you a check for $100,000, you are out of the deal now, I own it for the next 5 years, I then sell it or revalue it at the end of 5 years, it's now worth a positive $128,000 to me. All right? Everybody cool? All right. Yep. Okay. Is the BEG still on your display?
No.
Okay. All right. Try it one more time, clear it all, and try putting it in, once again, exactly as written here. Okay. Anybody else? Yep. The 5 shift in, basically all that's doing is it's saying it's 5 years times 12 monthly payments or 60 months. So whenever you put in this 5 shift in your display, it's going to instantaneously sort of pop up 60. Well, that was 30 years. This is only 5 years. Okay? All right. Yep. Did you get it that time?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, and that's another thing to sort of point out. As you're beginning with this stuff, the best advice would probably be to work each problem twice. Okay? Just to confirm that you got the answer, the same answer again. Now, you could be weird noise. All right, could be that obviously you put in wrong twice, but hopefully if you put it in the second time and you get the same answer, hopefully you're doing the right thing. Okay, moving forward. It's not from in here, is it? It's out there. Okay, all right, I'm just making sure that everybody else is hearing this. It's not just me and some sort of like, okay, senility moment. Okay, all right.
Hearing what?
So depending on how the question is worded, we'll know whether to plus or minus the
Yes,
value.
that is correct.
So it says that the farmer is gaining a monthly payment of
Correct. Now, what you're going to find is that as you get more comfortable with this stuff, that you have a tendency to probably play a little bit more fast and loose with it because you know what you're doing and you can sort of say, I really don't need to put that negative in there up front because I know that it's okay at the end because I'll end up with a negative number here, but I know it's really a positive number kind of thing. But until you get to that point, it's good to sort of start out with the proper habits of saying it's really a cash outflow. Okay? Yep.
Will you mark us off if it was switched, it was the question was asked?
No, it's a question of what you're being asked. I mean, I'm not going to, that's not the kind of trick I'm going to play. And, you know, in the sense of potentially making it a negative or a positive, what's going to matter is, once again, did you get 128,338.87? If you did not get that, it is wrong. Okay? Okay. So the second example type that they use here is compound an annuity to a future value. All right? Compound an annuity to a future value. Okay, what is an annuity? Again,
On payment.
it's a payment that is either made or received. Okay? Once again, depending on the perspective. All right? So, here, you know, you can look at this, a variety of different types of applications to this. It could be, I want to save some money, and, you know, like a savings account. Okay? Or I want to set aside some money, maybe to buy a property. Or I want to set aside some money to basically be able to pay for something at some point in the future. Okay? So, in this case, timeline is going to look something like this. All right? So, first of all, let's determine what we've got. How large of a payment do we want to make or receive? Give me a dollar amount. $1,000. Okay, and are we going to be making that payment or are we going to be receiving that payment? You tell me. There's no right or wrong answer right now because we're setting up the problem.
Receiving the payment.
We're going to be receiving the payment, okay? So a positive $1,000. How long are we going to be receiving this payment in terms of either months or years? How much?
5 years?
5 years, 10 years?
10 years.
What?
10 years.
Okay, 10 years, that's fine with me. All right. Do we want this to be annual or monthly? What? Annual? Okay, we'll do it annual. Okay, so what's going to happen, timeline, okay, is you're going to be making payments, or I'm sorry, receiving payments of $1,000 a year for the next 10 years. So how much total cash are you actually going to be basically receiving? $10,000. Okay, everybody follow that? Sorry? Okay, now the next part is at what rate? Okay, so in this case, why would that matter? Well, what are we doing with these payments? Chances are, if we're receiving them from somebody, we may be reinvesting them ourselves in a savings account or something else, or we may just simply be saying that, you know, hey, we want to know how much we can accumulate over a period of time. So let's say that we go with, what interest rate you want to use? 7%. All right, so what are we now searching for? We're searching for future value. How much is all of that going to be worth?
We're doing this annually, right?
Yes. How much is all of that going to be worth here at the end of 10 years? Now, simple math, without the compounding of the interest, simple math would tell us it's going to be something greater than what? $10,000. Okay. But how much more? All right. Well, how do we set it up on the calculator? Okay. Since this is annual, it's going to be one payment per year. Then we're going to have 1,000 as our payment amount. 10 years as our term. 7% as our interest rate, and then solve for future value. Okay? Everybody set it up that way. You just hit the one shift payment per year. So one shift payment per year. Okay. Everybody good? Okay, solve it real quick. Right? You should get negative 13, 18, 45. Okay, everybody good with that?
Why is the future value negative in this case?
Okay, in this case, since this is really an accumulation, it's, once again, it's sort of a matter of perspective, okay? We're saying we're receiving this money for the 10-year period. How much would we have at the end of 10 years that we would then be able to pay out as a negative from us?
So we're receiving monthly payments,
Yes.
and then we are,
We're doing something in the sense of we're putting that money to work somehow at 7%, but at the end, how much would we then have that we would be able to pay out?
So say the bank something gave you $1,000, we can then loan $13,000.
At the
I'll
end.
pay the, okay.
That's
Just
two about
pay
the person.
somebody else, somebody else.
Okay?
Right.
Say you're the intermediary.
Okay. And once again, this one up here was 128, 335, 87. Okay? So far, so good. Yes? Okay. Moving forward. Okay. All right. So the next one. Okay. So now, let's see. This next one is for sinking fund payment. All right. So what's happening here?
Those are like, that's money that you can save aside for certain, not unexpected, but maybe,
Capital
Like-
expenditures.
Yes, for capital expenditures, okay? In this particular case, it's a variation of the previous problem. Because what we're doing here is we're saying we know how much we need to have at some future date sitting in our account. For example, give me a dollar. Like for example, we want to replace an air conditioner, or we want to replace carpet, or we want to replace something, several years from now. So what dollar amount? 5,000. So we want to have $5,000 sitting in this account at some future date that we know, like, as a good owner, property manager of a property, typically one of the things that you do is you say, what? We've got things that are going to wear out over time, so we need to set aside some sort of a capital reserve. And specifically, that capital reserve fund would be used for things like replacing air conditioners, or in the case of residential, refrigerators, and other things that are going to wear out, carpet and roofs and so forth, so on. Okay, make sense? All right, so we need $5,000 in our bank account at the end of some period of time. Okay, what period of time are we talking about? How many years or months? How much?
8 years.
8 years, okay? All right, and we'll make that annual, excuse me, make that annual as well. All right, now, the question is, excuse me, is how much of a payment would we have to set aside each year? So 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 8 years. What is the dollar amount of that payment? It's going to be a negative. Would we have to set aside? Now, just once again, simple math would dictate that we don't need to do this, I'm just trying to make sure you follow the logic. Simple math would say $5,000 is what we need to accumulate, correct? Divided by 8 years, that would be $625 a year that we would have to set aside. Well, thanks to our friend of compound interest, we may not have to set aside quite that amount, because we're going to be earning interest on that money, hopefully in the bank account. Does that make sense? Yes or no? Okay, so even if we get a modicum of interest from the bank, let's say 2 or 3%, okay, we'll go with 2.5% just to split the difference. All right? Then how much does that mean we would need to set aside at the end of each year for that 8-year term? Okay, so setting this up on the calculator. Okay, so here's our setup. We don't have a present value amount because we're not looking at a lump sum that we're depositing. We're looking at a payment that we're going to deposit each year for those 8 years. Okay, so it should be something less than $625. So let's see what it is. Okay, 572.34. Okay, everybody cool with that? Any questions? All right. Good. Moving forward. Number 4. So in this case, discount a single future value amount to a present value. Okay, discount a single future value amount to a present value. All right, here, this would be another way of looking at kind of, once again, our sort of a real estate problem. We could say, we've got a property that maybe we know what we are going to have to pay for it at some future. In other words, we've got a contract that maybe is even multiple years into the future that we've pre-negotiated, and we can say, all right, how much would we have to really set aside today in a savings account to come up with that amount that we would use to purchase that property at some future date? Okay, that makes sense? Or another way of looking at it is, how much is that, the property, we know what the property is worth in the future, how much is it worth today, is another way of looking at this. Okay, so once again, timeline. Okay, first of all, how much is our property worth in the future?
10 million.
10 million. Okay, how long of a time period are we looking at in terms of the future? And this, once again, this doesn't have to be a long time period.
3 years.
Yeah, it could be just a few years. It can even be months. We could say, we've got a contract that actually is executable 6 months from now. Same process, okay? But we'll go ahead and use 3 years. And we said 36 months or monthly?
Sure.
Okay. So 3 years, 36 months. All right, and we're going to be solving for, once again, how much is it worth today? All right, what else do we need to know? The rate, okay? So what's going to be the discount rate that we're going to use?
3%.
Okay, 3%. Okay. All right, you ready to go with that one? All right. So, calculator, go back to 12 payments per year. $10 million as our future value. Okay, and 3% as our interest rate, solve for present value. Now, another little trick while we're sort of going through this, okay, everybody understand that setup, yes? All right, one other little thing you could do, once again, once you start to become more comfortable with the stuff, instead of entering this as 3 shift in, you could simply enter it as what? 36 in without the shift. All the shift does here is that's taking and multiplying the term by the number of payments per year. Okay? If you leave it out, then, in other words, if this were not here, if the shift were not here, and you were just put in 3 in, under these circumstances, the calculator would assume what? 3 months. Okay, everybody follow that? All right. All right, let's go ahead and solve this one.
So in that case, it would assume 12 payments in 3 months?
No. In this case, it is 3 years times 12 months or 36 months. But if we had removed this piece of it, the shift, then it would automatically be saying that's only 3 months.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying, just to be clear. Or you can simply enter it as 36 in to be the full 36 months. There are multiple ways of entering it, is all we're trying to express there. Okay. Okay, 9,140,338.37. Okay, everybody good? Okay,
I didn't get that, but I probably made mistakes in this, so.
you probably did. Okay,
Thank you.
all right, let's move forward. All right, so number 5, discount an annuity to a present value. Okay. So here, we know what the payments are that we're going to be receiving on something, piece of real estate, some other sort of investment, we know what the payments are, and we're sort of assuming, which we're going to get into a little bit later, there's no residual value associated with the asset, whatever it might be, and we're just simply looking at what is the value of those payments that we're receiving. So, timeline, we are going to be solving for basically the present value here at time 0, and we're going to be receiving these payments each month or each year. Oops. Okay. Each month or each year.
Question, you said we're just gonna sell for our present value or our present value is 0?
We're solving for the present value at time period 0. But what we're doing is we're going to be receiving an annuity payment either each month or each year for some time in the future. Okay, so the first question we've got to ask or answer is, number 1, is it going to be monthly or annual? What do you want? Monthly. Okay, so that's the first piece. Okay. Second piece is, how big is this payment going to be, or this annuity going to be? The monthly annuity. $1,200? Okay. All right, so for each month, we're going to be receiving $1,200 a month. Okay? How long are we going to receive this in months?
3 years.
Okay, 3 years, so 36 months. Okay, all right, and anything else we need to know? Interest rate, okay? So what is the interest rate we're going to apply here? Okay, 6%. All right, so in setting this up,
What about the future? Oh,
we don't have one. Okay, so here, we put in the $1,200 as our payment amount, 6% as our interest rate. I'm going to throw you off here just for fun. 36 in as our term, and then solve for present value. Okay? And you could have put this in as 3 shift in, but in this case, I just simply said it's now 36 in or 36 months. Okay. Now, in doing this, let's see what we get. So $39,445.22. Yes? Okay. So, just for fun, cash money are we really talking about that we would be receiving? Ignoring the time value of money here for a second, we're receiving $1,200 a month
43
times 36 months, so 43,200. So the point being is in real cash money, we're actually receiving 43,200, but the discounted value of that, because we're having to wait over 3 years to get all that money, it's really only worth the 39,000 to us. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, everybody good so far? All right. Number 6. Okay, determine a series of equal payments necessary to amortize a present value. What does that sound like to you? Determine a series of equal payments to amortize a, what? It's like a mortgage payment or a car payment. That's all we're doing, okay? All right, so, in this particular case, we can do it as a, like I said, we can do it as a mortgage payment or as a car payment, same concept. All right, first of all, how many months or years?
Let's do 360 months.
360 months, okay? Or 30 years. Okay? How large of a present value or how large of a loan are we talking about? 200,000. Okay. What interest rate?
4.5.
4.5. Okay, and so what are we going to be solving for? The monthly payment, starting here at period 1. Okay, now you should be able to set this one up by yourself because we've done enough examples of this, but okay, so there's our setup. 12 payments per year, since it's monthly, $200,000 present value or loan amount, 4.5% interest rate, 30-year term, and let's see what our monthly payment is going to be. $1,013.
No, wait, right?
I'm sorry?
No, wait.
Yep. 101337. Okay. Everybody good? Yes, no, possibly could be. Okay. So any questions about any of those up to this point? Feel pretty good about those? Okay. Okay. All right. Once again, make sure that if you did get something wrong, put it in again, but make sure you clear everything out. Always kind of after each of these, probably do the clear all just to make sure that what was in there from the previous problem doesn't stick around for that problem. Okay. Let us move forward. Okay. All right, so let's talk a little bit about, excuse me, internal rate of return. Probably the most common calculation that you do with real estate or any sort of investing is the internal rate of return. To figure out what is the rate of return that I am receiving as the investor off of this deal, okay? So in terms of the normal setup from a real estate perspective, let's just think about this. What are going to be the key pieces of information? Because what you're going to see is we're probably going to have a few additional pieces of information. So first of all, one of the first things that you're going to ask is, how much do we pay for the property? Okay, so you tell me, how much do we pay for the property? How much? $1 million. Okay? So, $1 million, we're going to assume this is an all equity deal, meaning no debt. Okay? So $1 million is what we paid. All right? Now, usually, whenever we enter into, this sort of a situation, we have an expectation of what we would like, in other words, to sell it for. In other words, we have an exit strategy, okay? Before you enter any real estate deal, you should always think about how you're going to get out of that deal, for whatever reason. For good reasons or for bad reasons, you should always begin to think about your exit strategy at the very beginning. So with that said, many investors will go into a deal saying, I only want to own this for 5 years. And at the end of 5 years, I want to sell it for some predetermined price to achieve some sort of internal rate of return that I want. Does that make sense? Okay? So you give me a time frame. I said 5 years, but you pick a time frame. Any time frame. 12 years? Okay. 12 years. All right?
You gotta hit the cycle again.
So, at the end of 12 years, what do we think we want to sell this property for? Just give me a number. Hopefully higher than what we paid for it. But it doesn't have to be, but hopefully higher than what we paid for it.
1.5?
Okay, $1.5 million. Because part of what I'm trying to do here is to illustrate, once again, how you should be visualizing this. So we said 12 years, okay? We're going to sell it for $1.5 million. All right? Now, in this particular case, are we going to be receiving any cash flow off of this property, either monthly or annually? Yeah. Hopefully, we're going to be receiving some rents. Yes? All right? So if we do, how much are those? And are those going to be, are we going to want to do it monthly or are we going to do it annually? You tell me. We're going to do it monthly. All right? So I'm hearing, so 12 times 12 is what? 144 months? If I remember my 5th grade math. All right?
How many years did you guys say?
12 years. 12 times 12 is 144, or at least last time I checked. Okay, 144 months. Now, how much are we going to receive each month? Now, chances are, you probably want to be thinking about this and backing into a number, because you're probably going to think about it as, or you should be thinking about it, how much are we getting annually, and then what would that translate into monthly? This is the way I would be thinking about it, okay? Because if we're putting out $1 million on a very simplistic basis, if we got $100,000 a year, that would basically be representing what? A 10% rate of return, yes? Okay? So, but 100,000 divided by 12 is going to be what? 8,030, 33 or something like that, okay? Now, you tell me, what number do you want to use for your monthly income? Monthly income.
7,000.
7,000, okay? So that's going to be a positive that you're going to be receiving for that 144. Now, just listen, once again, I always like to do some simple math to make sure that we are clear with what we're actually doing. So, $7,000 a month translates into 7 times 12, $84,000 a year. Okay? $84,000 a year based on $1 million would be 8.4% would be your rate of return, just on that piece. Everybody follow me? Excuse me. Okay? But we also have what we call the reversion value. In other words, what we're selling the property for at the end of this 12-year period. And we're getting 1.5 million, so that's going to add a little bit of something to that 8.4%. Does that make sense? Just doing basic math, not trying to do time value of money math. I'm just trying to get your brain wrapped around it. Okay, so what are we, in this case, what are we solving for? Internal rate of return or the interest rate?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, because, now this is a big because and a caveat. Because the payments are equal each and every month, we can simply use the basic time value of money keys across the top of the calculator. If they are not equal from one month to the next, like for example, in reality,